going to be many more, all of them as exciting as tonight. As I speak, and we get going tonight, I encourage you to turn your cell phones to buzz, or silence them in some way, but please feel free to leave them on and take photos, to tweet out, and to put this event on social media. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to Joan Bauer.
Thanks, everyone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the Girl Scouts of Connecticut who are with us here tonight. I'm Joan Bauer, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to tonight's event, which is part of the Civility of America series sponsored by the Ferguson Library and the Dylan Schneider Group in conjunction with Hearst Media Services. Tonight's speaker has a message of critical importance to every American community: why girls matter. As CEO of Girl Scouts of the USA, Ana Maria Chavez leads not only one of America's most beloved and iconic brands, but also the largest nonprofit leadership organization for girls in the world. I'd like to ask how many members of the audience were once Girl Scouts or continue to be. Good job, good job. No men. Oh, men. Well, we're all in good company because more than 59 million American women still alive today participated in Girl Scouts during childhood. And Ana Chavez is indeed one of the girls. She began her career journey in the very same movement she now leads, a lifetime member of Girl Scouts and an award-winning community leader. Ana's early experiences growing up as a Girl Scout in Eloy, Arizona, lit a passion for public service and social engagement. Her desire to make the world a better place led her to Yale University, where she earned a bachelor's degree, followed by a Juris Doctorate at the James E. Rogers College of Law at the University of Arizona. She has since been admitted to the bar of the U.S. District Court for the District of Arizona, the Arizona Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court. Ana's interest in serving others brought her first to Washington, D.C., where she held numerous posts in President Bill Clinton's administration, including as senior policy advisor to former U.S. Secretary of Transportation Rodney E. Slater. She later served as Deputy Chief of Staff for Urban Relations and Community Development under then-Governor Janet Napolitano. Serving as Chief Executive of Girl Scouts of Southwest Texas, she was recognized by the National Board of Girl Scouts of the USA and appointed its Chief Executive Officer in 2011. In her current role as head of the global organization, Ana advocates for 2.7 million young girls and adult volunteers through 112 councils in 92 countries. Although this month, January, is the beginning of its famed cookie sale season, the Girl Scout movement today functions as far more than a dispenser of Thin Mints. Under Ana Chavez's innovative and visionary leadership, Girl Scouts is undergoing a remarkable tech renaissance that has included the introduction of digital cookies. It was named among the world's top 10 most innovative companies in not-for-profit in 2015 by Fast Company magazine, and Ana was cited as one of the most creative people for 2014, and there is much, much more underway. Yet today, more than 100 years after the founding of the Girl Scouts movement by Juliette Gordon-Low, Ana Chavez continues to uphold the organization's fundamental mission to build girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. Girl Scouts under Ana's leadership is living, breathing proof that in an increasingly uncivil world, an investment in our young girls is an investment in America's economic and ethical future. And now it's my privilege and pleasure to introduce Santa Maria Chavez.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Joan. I'm honored. Thank you for your kind words. And I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to be here as part of this important series on civility in America. But before I start the evening, first I would like to recognize one of my dear partners and an amazing leader in our movement, Mary Barnaby, the CEO of Girl Scouts of Connecticut. I would also really love if our current volunteers that currently serve our amazing girls in Connecticut could please stand. If you're here, would you please stand and be recognized? The volunteers. You are truly the best part of our movement. You are the role models for our girls, and our girls look up to you. And I want to acknowledge that you spend a lot of evenings, a lot of days thinking through how do we create the next generation of leaders in the United States. And thank you for your dedication. I really appreciate it. So for me, it seems that this premise of this series is born of everyday experiences we have. We live in a world in which rude behavior and coarse language are increasingly commonplace. A world where it often seems good manners are considered quaintly out of fashion. Now, it is true that our judgment about what is and what is not civil behavior can be subjective. Sometimes not just what a person does, but who a person represents, what communities they are from. When we stubbornly cling to outdated and harmful stereotypes as truth, whereby, again, gender, race, age, religion, or socioeconomic status, we contribute to unnecessary discord and construct sometimes insurmountable barriers to connecting on a more meaningful and respectful level. That's why, again, I believe this theme this evening is so appropriate. But there is no question that one of the great challenges of the 21st century is to counteract the spread of incivility. And so, on drawing on my own personal and professional life, I would like to speak this evening about the lessons that can be gained from the Girl Scout leadership experience. In particular, I want to talk about what we call the Girl Scout Law and Promise, and what their implementation can mean for leaders, not only within Girl Scouts, but for our leaders of tomorrow. And we know that Girl Scouts drives leadership in young girls all over the globe. I'm confident in touting the effectiveness of this approach because I have seen firsthand the power that this movement of girls and women working together for constructive change can have on society. Let me start by saying I am convinced that intolerance is the chief source of the problem we must address. The headlines, which seem to grow even more stark and disturbing with each passing day, confirm this. In light of a recent series of unspeakable tragedies and incendiary controversies, both domestically and abroad, the issue of intolerance has surged to the forefront of public consciousness. When catastrophes occur, we struggle. We struggle together to grasp their implications, and we try so hard to find the meaning in the aftermath, to make sense, sometimes, of the senseless. Of course, no one struggles more to come to the terms of these events than our most vulnerable and impressionable among us, and those are our children. Consciously or not, thanks to an omnipresent media and internet, our kids are all too attuned to the tragedies of the world. But they sometimes lack the emotional tools to absorb them and to understand how they can make a positive change. they look to us, the adults in their lives, for guidance on how to process what has happened. This presents us with a crucial opportunity to shape how our children perceive the world around them, in their communities, in their states, and in this country, and to demonstrate how they can serve as agents of positive change. I know I struggle with that every day. As a mother of a 14-year-old who sees what's happened not only here on the East Coast, but what he sees in the newspapers and on TV. And how, as his mentor, as his mother, do I help him walk in that grace and civility that we all want to uphold. And you and all of us as parents and teachers and mentors and leaders, how can we protect and inspire our kids to be unafraid, and to be courageous leaders in the future? As CEO of Girl Scouts of the USA, I lead an organization that constantly addresses this question. We are 2.7 million people strong, the largest leadership organization for girls in the world. That's 1.9 million girls and 800,000 adults who are dedicated to the belief that girls can change the world. All our members are bound by the Girl Scout mission and the Girl Scout law, which are the foundation of our code of conduct. We may not call it the code of conduct, but we clearly understand this is how we want to live, breathe, and be seen in communities. The mission of Girl Scouts is to build girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. The Girl Scout law requires that we remain responsible for what we say and do, and it stipulates that we must always be a sister to every Girl Scout. Simple ideas, perhaps, but they are the reason our movement has led the change for more diversity, for more inclusivity, for more empathy, for more compassion than any, I believe, group ever in the history of the United States. We were being inclusive long before any federal law told us to integrate our Girl Scout troops. Even Martin Luther King said and showed that Girl Scouts was the symbol of inclusivity, and said that we were the hallmark of what it meant to leave differences behind and embrace those who may be different from us. I can't tell you how proud I am to be part of that history, and the reason I'm proud to lead this organization. Now, I think there is a reason these ideas have stood the test of time and helped millions of American girls to become empathetic, collaborative women leaders in virtually every walk of life. The reason is that the ideas compel us to take others into account. We're wired that way. That means that whether you're a Girl Scout serving your community in France or Tokyo or Oklahoma, you feel empowered to be a game changer. In fact, you feel impassioned and emboldened about it. You are fueled by a sense of openness, intellectual curiosity, and tolerance. The traits that are necessary to become a truly considerate and successful leader and a global citizen. In the face of intimidation and fear, whether they're personal lives or because they definitely live across the globe and in communities where they see violence, unfortunately, every day, we are teaching our girls and our children within our family that there is no need to succumb to the darkness, that you can always choose to rise above it. Somewhere along the way, however, this very simple, basic idea may have been misplaced, not only here at home, but also in our global society. More and more, we seem to be establishing a culture predicated on inflexibility in ideologies and viewpoints, in this staunchness that so often hinders a vibrant, healthy, and free exchange of ideas. It is this inflexibility that keeps people from considering different perspectives and seeing the other side of important questions. This growing dearth of civility in our culture threatens to rob us of the ability to connect with one another with compassion. That is why we must exercise the power that we all possess, the ability to reject intolerance in its place. We must chart a course that speaks to, in the concluding words of Abraham Lincoln's first inaugural address, the better angels of our nature. We must remember that opposing opinion should never outweigh the respect we show for one another. We must remember that each person we encounter has a story, a unique story, and that if we allow it, that story can enrich and inform our own stories in ways both surprising and invigorating. One of the fundamental principles of our organization is that the Girl Scout mission isn't just about encouraging girls to be nice to one another at troop meetings or while selling our infamous cookies. It is to mean something in their day-to-day lives. And as I tell girls, it's not just when people are watching, it's when people aren't watching. Without real and meaningful action, the promise is merely words on the page. Inspiring words, of course, no doubt, but ultimately empty platitudes, all too easy to ignore or dismiss. We insist that Girl Scout law and promise are guides to guide us in life, and that can lead us to lead others in empathy, understanding, and the society of inclusivity. Now, it would be fair, of course, to ask whether or not we're teaching girls these lessons in almost a foolish, not very optimistic way. After all, the line between showing understanding and being too trusting can be a thin one. Compassion sometimes can be taken for weakness, and empathy could be answered with aggression. Well, are we setting up our girls for disappointment and even failure by offering values that are hopelessly impractical? Some may ask. Will their experiences in the adult world bring these ideals crashing to earth? Well, if real-life experience is the standard by which things are to be judged, then it would be useful to look at what is happening to Girl Scouts as they've gone out into the world as adults and who have lived with these ideals. After all, proof's in the pudding, isn't it? We have 59 million alumni who are all over the world doing great things. And there is evidence that they're making a difference. And our alumni are all within all sorts of sectors. In the world of entertainment, I can name many, including, some of the girls may know, Taylor Swift. In the world of athletics, tennis star Venus Williams is a Girl Scout. Media great Robin Roberts is a Girl Scout alum. Virtually every female astronaut who has flown into space is a Girl Scout. And of course, there are women running major corporations like Ginny Rometty at IBM and Mary Barra at GM, who are also Girl Scouts. And what about politics? I lived in the world of politics for many years. Some may say, how can you possibly have empathy and civility in government? Why do you laugh? It's a pretty tough environment. You could be eaten alive if you're empathetic and kind and considerate and treat everybody like a Girl Scout. Well, the reality is we've got Girl Scouts there doing great things. The reality is, if you look at the current Senate, 15 of the 20 women in the U.S. Senate are Girl Scout alum. So are more than half of the women in the House of Representatives. And if you look at the women who are currently serving as governors across this nation, 4 of the 5 are Girl Scout alum. And then if you look within the administration, going back a few years, all 3 female secretaries of state were Girl Scouts. Interesting. Of course, embracing the values of tolerance and civility is not a hindrance to success. You can see it. The Girl Scouts are doing great things. And I think it's more than a matter of opinion. According to a recent survey, nearly 2/3 of Girl Scouts view themselves as leaders, compared to 44% of other girls and 52% of boys. And of course, we continue to train the next generation of women leaders, particularly, of course, through our famous Girl Scout cookie program. Because I want to pause for a second on that in particular, because people kind of, they chuckle. We sell Girl Scout cookies. What does that have to do with civility or even bringing up leaders? Well, I have to tell you, all the women I've ever run into who are running their own business, running corporations, even running government, they will tell me they got their business skills selling Girl Scout cookies. What harder job than to walk up to a stranger's door, knock on it, and make a sales pitch? So I applaud that because, again, we're proud that, yes, we embrace our cookie program. It is the largest girl-run business in the entire world. These ladies raise in 1/4 of the year $700 million. And it all stays locally. I don't get a penny. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that because it has been the revenue line for these girls to take action in this world. They use it to fund their Take Action programs to make a difference in their communities. And what I'm excited about is my boss, I have many bosses, average age is 8, they told me a few years ago, we love our cookie program, but please bring it up to date. Integrate our daily lives of technology into the Girl Scout program. And because the Girl Scout cookie program is the largest girl program for our girls, we started there. And what we found in introducing Digital Cookie, which enables them to sell cookies online, to do it through tablets and phones, is that it's teaching them a whole new set of skills. Because anybody who knows in today's economy, if e-commerce and a multi-channel platform is not part of your business plan, you better talk to the Girl Scouts, they'll show you the way. So for me, that's why, again, our program goes back to understanding that how important this is. And I love my bosses, because they tell me and they give me great advice. And recently I learned about our Wonderkin. We have a Girl Scout who in our initial year of selling Girl Scout cookies on our Digital Cookie site sold, if you want to guess, her name is, she's 13 years old, she's from New York, her name is Olivia Crenshaw. She sold 1,647 boxes of cookies. Yes. So if somebody had to question whether or not Digital Cookie works, let them talk to Miss Olivia. And what Olivia said, well, it was not too bad, especially for me. You know, I only started selling when I was in first grade. Isn't that great? But again, for us, it's trying to make our program relevant. Because why? You ask, why does the Girl Scouts have to be relevant? Why does that matter? Why should you go home tonight and go, who do I know who's a girl between the age of 5 and 17, and why aren't they Girl Scouts? And I got to show them up now. I've got to sign them up, I've got to volunteer. Why should you leave this room tonight with that thought? And here's why. Going back to civility, going back to the reason we were founded, is that these girls grow up with the understanding that they connect to a larger community, to a larger world. They're empathetic. They understand they have to treat people like they want to be treated. And they don't wait to take action. Even at 5 years old, they realize they have a power in their voice and in their character, and they want to make a difference. And if there's one girl left outside this equation and opportunity, that's one girl that doesn't get an opportunity to really show the potential. That's why it's important that you learn about our program, that you understand we need people to step back in. All of you who raised your hand tonight and said, I was a Girl Scout. No, you weren't a Girl Scout. You are a Girl Scout. It is time for you to come back. As my son says, back to the mothership. Right? Because if we've had 59 million Girl Scouts go through our program and now they're doing great things and raising great families, we need to ensure that the next generation of girls are in that similar pipeline. I think that's how we will address the issues of civility. Now, of course, I'm a little biased. I was a Girl Scout growing up. And even when people told me that the data really backed up against me, I was a girl in a rural community that didn't come from a lot of resources, Girl Scouts said, no, you are worth the investment. And because of that investment, like other girls across the country, I understood my potential. And I stepped into my life in a way to make a difference. Not to ask people to do things for me, but I asked what I could do for this country. And I believe, again, that the fundamental principles of what we do in Girl Scouts provides the best antidote for the loss of civility and the spread of intolerance in our society. The Girl Scout Leadership Experience helps girls learn not to avoid things that are hard for them, but makes them better students and leaders. Early character building experience in childhood lay the foundation for later success. And I'm convinced that as our obligation as adults is clearly to instill this in our children, we have the moral obligation to instill the right values of civility, empathy, honesty, and courage. And while our world may seem adrift in turbulence at times, our children are always our best hope for the future. And that is why I believe all adults who see themselves as mentors and role models for our children should try to embrace the ideals of our Girl Scout mission. In fact, again, I would argue that by living out those values in their lives, adults can effectively demonstrate the power of inclusivity for our children and change their lives for the better, forever. Investing in our girls is an investment in the United States and its economy. I've talked to many leaders of industry. I've talked to leaders of government, of academia, of social welfare programs. And I explained to them, this is the workforce pipeline. And when we leave 50% of that pipeline out of the equation, that's when it will have an impact. So thank you. Thank you for granting me this opportunity to speak on a subject that is very close to my heart. I thank you for coming and listening. I thank you for understanding that we need you in this game, that we collectively can have an impact on intolerance in communities in the world. And as I visit our Girl Scouts in Germany and Italy, and soon hopefully in Israel, I will be able to go to them and say that you're not alone. Even though you may feel at the age of 8 wearing your Girl Scout uniform, you're standing at an abyss of looking at a future that may not seem bright because of the adult conversations that they're watching and they're hearing. But for me, I wake up every day joyful and understanding that I've seen true light. I've seen greatness. And many times, it comes in the size of a brownie, who can truly articulate why people matter. And why, starting today, we can all make a difference. Thank you. So now, it is my great pleasure that I get to introduce one of our girls. I'm very pleased to do that. She represents and embraces the theme this evening, and I would love for you to hear from her how she incorporates civility every day in her life. She is a Gold Award recipient. The Gold Award is the highest award you can earn in Girl Scouting. She's an accomplished ambassador of Girl Scouts and who attends the Academy of Information Technology and Engineering right here in Stanford. So she's one of your own here in Connecticut. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Miss Allison Tovar.
Good evening. I'm Allison Tovar. I'm from Troop 50490, and I've been a Girl Scout for over 10 years now. One line I remember learning as a brownie from the Girl Scout law is to respect myself and others. To respect myself is to make me the best me that I can be, and that is by being a good, helpful citizen and bettering my community, because the community reflects the citizens that belong to it. To respect others is to realize that my actions not only affect myself, but the others around me. I need to remember that it is important to not only think of my needs, but the needs of others. These are the principles that I designed my Gold Award project around, called Think Before You Drink. Think Before You Drink was an alcohol awareness program that I started at my school, a 5-day program. I shared informational statistics, passed out different cards about the harmful effects of alcohol on teenage drinkers and adult drinkers. I simulated DUI tests at my school while wearing fatal vision goggles which simulate drunken behavior. And I received 200 pledges from students of a student body of 691 students to pledge not to binge drink over the Thanksgiving break. The following week, once my project was complete, I received praise and recognition from teachers, parents, and other students. However, the most pleasing feeling for me was knowing that I had a positive effect on my peers. Overall, I felt I served my community and school very well because I was able to create a safer environment for the students currently there and the future students. Students were also further educated on harmful effects of alcohol, and I feel pleased knowing that I was able to teach high school students the responsibility of being respectful to themselves and to others. And that is my greatest accomplishment, was my Gold Award. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I believe at this point, we're going to be opening it up for questions. And there are mics coming to you. There's a question. There.
Other than Girl Scouts, what did you do as a kid?
That's a good question. So I lived in a farm town, so there wasn't really a lot to do. The biggest city close to me was Phoenix. It was an hour away. No, I did not do that alone. The other thing I did was actually 4-H. I loved 4-H. Anybody in 4-H? Been in 4-H? Yeah. Great program, right? So 4-H basically taught us a lot about the environment, but a lot, I learned to ride, take care of livestock. That's what I did in Girl Scouts and ballet. We'll get you a microphone.
The fact of our society is so many parents work. How do Girl Scouts get to the meetings?
It's a great question. That is something that we're working on. When I was growing up, the Girl Scout troop was facilitated through the school, right? I remember stories of people saying they used to wear their Girl Scout uniform to school. There was Girl Scout Day and Boy Scout Day, and everybody wore their uniforms, right? What's interesting is that model has changed over the years, and for all sorts of reasons, we've had to find other places to meet. I also believe that, again, with more parents working, it is difficult, right, to be able to pivot back and forth for after-school activities. So our volunteers have gotten very creative. We've also created partnerships with other organizations. So if school facilities aren't available, we'll partner with local nonprofits, such as the Boys and Girls Clubs, to host troop meetings. We also host troop meetings at night and on weekends to accommodate our volunteers. So that's what we've done. But to be honest, that's where you can be helpful, is that we currently have waiting lists of girls across the country who want to be Girl Scouts. A lot of people believe, oh, girls don't want to be Girl Scouts, it's not relevant. Actually, that's not the case. I've been to many, many councils across the world, and again, girls come up to me who want to be Girl Scouts, but we can't find enough adult volunteers. So volunteer if you have time. I will go wherever you take the microphone.
Have you ever met the president
Of which one?
of the USA?
Of the USA? Good question. So yes, I've met President Clinton. I worked for President Clinton. I've met Junior Bush, so the son, right, President Bush, and I've met, of course, Mr. Obama. Yes, I took the Girl Scouts to see him several times. Yes.
Of all the troops you've ever seen, which do you think had the best intention?
Of all the troops I've ever seen, what troops have the best intentions? That's a deep question. So they all have deep intentions, but they're all focused on different things. I go to some councils and visit Girl Scouts, and they're very focused on outdoors, and they really like their camps and doing high-impact activities. I go to visit some girls, and they're very involved in science and math, and they like robotics. So they all have great intentions. I think they all the common thread and common theme that I hear from girls is they want to make a big impact. They want to help. It's beautiful. Could you not turn everybody into individuals who say, I want to help? Right? We could do so much more, and so that's been fun. For the Girl Scouts overseas that I visit, their focus is ensuring that people realize we do have Girl Scouts overseas, and they want to stay connected to our Girl Scouts here domestically.
We have one back here.
Hi, yes, I want to say first of all, congratulations to the young lady that got the gold award. Again, that's very I happen to be one of the first recipients of the silver award. That's how old I am. So that was here in the Southwestern Connecticut Girl Scout Council. So
Congratulations.
thank you. And I want to ask, first of all, the comment, Girl Scouts actually, if it hadn't been for Girl Scouts all the way through my high school life, I don't know where I would have been. So I'm very grateful to them and had a wonderful time through them. My mother blames the uniform and the fact that we wore them to school on my joining the military, actually. Because I like the uniform, I like wearing it. And this brings me to my question. The uniform is modified greatly from when I was a Girl Scout. And I'm wondering, has it been considered that it goes back to a more traditional style, or it's quite casual now compared to when we were, when I was a Girl Scout?
Yeah, so I will tell you, I have a bias, freely admitted even on camera, that I believe it's part of my identity as a Girl Scout. I also believe it brings pride to the organization, that we are quickly identified as being part of an organization that has a long history and great legacy. And I've been hearing that more and more from girls, that they would like more fuller uniforms, and the adult volunteers would like a more formal uniform. Now, one of my mentors happens to be Frances Hesselbein. How many people know Frances Hesselbein? Okay, so those of you who don't know Frances was my predecessor back she would say just a few decades ago. And she will not admit she turned 100 in October. But I actually sit behind her desk every day. I took it out of archives. And I'm a historian. I love history. And I have been following it. And Frances was one of the first, in recent history, who redesigned the uniform. And she went to Halston and she said, you need to create a new Girl Scout uniform. So we did. So Halston created a Girl Scout uniform, and Oscar de la Renta, right, I believe, also. So I think it's time. I think it's time to revisit that. I would love to see a more unified uniform across the country. But with one caveat, just one, and I think you could help me with this. I want to ensure if we do have full uniforms, that all girls get a uniform. I will tell you one of my saddest moments. There should be no sad moments in Girl Scouts, but when I was named the National Sea of Girl Scouts, they wanted to show a picture of me as a Girl Scout in uniform, but I didn't have one because I was in a rural community. We shared one Girl Scout badge book, and we didn't have uniforms. And so my hope is that for all girls, that they have the ability, because it does distinguish, unfortunately, and they should have an opportunity to have the full experience.
Thank you for coming tonight. I feel so honored to have you, and I just want to say you did a fabulous job. And I want to talk about the Gold Award for a second, because this is our centennial coming up, and there are 10 decades of women who have accomplished this. And I really think it really connects back to the core of our mission, that girls not only want to give back to their communities, but they want to do sustainable things. So could you talk a little bit more about that?
About the Gold Award?
Yes.
Absolutely. So, interesting enough, I asked 2 questions everywhere I go, just to get a pulse. I asked general audiences, how many people know the highest award in Boy Scouting? Right? And I asked, what is the highest award in Girl Scouts? Okay. Now this room is full of Girl Scouts. No! Well, a lot of people don't realize that it is the Gold Award. Now, having said that, we have changed the names over the decades. However, I think it's an opportunity with the 100th anniversary of the highest award in Girl Scouting, which is in 2016, this year, to really recognize the amazing achievements of our highest award in Girl Scouting. And for us, it really talks about what girls can do when they're empowered to do that. Every year, thousands of girls gets their Gold Award. They earn their Gold Award. And out of all the millions of girls over the years, about 6% of Girl Scouts every year earn their Gold Award. They get their Bronze Award, their Silver Award, and their Gold Award. And once a year, we pick 10 young women of distinction. So these are women, young women, who have gone on to get their Gold Award but their Gold Award service projects really go above and beyond. And I will tell you, over the last 4 years, having recognized these young women of distinction who've earned this award, their awards represent stunning achievements. And they are going after tough issues. They're not just thinking about, conserving water. Yes, they are, but they're also dealing with really tough issues that sometimes adults don't want to talk about, but that girls clearly see in their cities and towns, right? When they see girls, unfortunately, being pulled into illegal situations or, being trafficked, that issue impacts them, and they want to talk about it. And so whether they're talking about renewable energy or they're thinking about, there's one young lady who understood that bees were dying and how the lack of bees impacts the sustainability of food in your community. So she started a whole food drive around bees, meaning she went to a local monastery of nuns and said, can I use your property to grow whole hives of bees? And she started with one queen, and now there are more bees on this monastery than they can do it. But she took action to understand that she wanted to make a difference, not on her community, but the environment. And that's what the Gold Award represents. We're also doing a research study, which we'll announce here shortly, the results. We went state university by state university across the country to see how many scholarships were available for Eagle Scout recipients and for Gold Awards. Yeah. Let's talk about economic empowerment opportunities, right? What do you think? We're in Las Vegas. Where would you bet? Where would that research study come down? What will the data show us about where we invest for the Gold Award and we invest in the Eagle Scout? And I take nothing away from the Eagle Scout or the Boy Scout. But all I'm saying is if the girls are working just as hard and making just a bigger impact, as adults, we need to recognize that and give them an opportunity.
Hi, thank you so much for being here and for your remarks. I have a question for you. I think you talked a lot about what's happened in our culture.
Yes.
I think most people have been always and still are civil by nature. It's human nature. What I think is unique is that the minority, the sort of intolerant and rude minority, has gotten much more vocal. And what I think is even more upsetting to me is that our willingness to challenge that as adults, the civil majority, doesn't seem as courageous in challenging that behavior. I know my parents would have spoken up where maybe I don't. And little kids have no problem whatsoever calling out bad behavior. You lose that over time, and how do we help our Girl Scouts, and importantly even the adults here, to get that courage back to call out that bad behavior?
You bring up a really good subject because, again, I was raised by parents who, we grew up knowing we needed to be in service. That wasn't even an option. Like volunteering, that was part of ABCs for me. A, B, C, volunteering, D, E, F, right? That was just the code of conduct in our family. And I learned very early on the whole issue of civility and voice because my mother ran for office. She was one of the first women, Latino women in Arizona to run for office and win. And to go, I learned to canvass the neighborhood at the age of 8. I used to go to public meetings just to read what was on the business agenda. How crazy is that, right? And so I don't know if civility has changed in a way of, you now have social media and technology, right? So where conversations used to devolve, it stayed in that room. But now people are tweeting and sending messages through all sorts of channels that it's amplified. And what could be a conversation between 10 people, all of a sudden 100 people are commenting on in an anonymous way, right? So that's part of it. The girls also, they're great mentors. What they tell us too is it impacts them from a bullying standpoint. When they see adults take aggressive action against each other, they see it as, well, is that okay to do? Am I allowed to do that the same way, right? And I also have learned, and I found this because, again, I'm with girls a lot. I'll walk into conversations when they don't realize I'm around, and I'll be hearing them talk about certain things. I'm like, how do they even know that? And then I realize, because they're hearing it around their kitchen table, right? And they're hearing how people interact and what they say and what we say behind closed doors. And so for us, it's being that example. I also think, and this is what my Girl Scout experience has taught me, is that in the depths of those, let's say, situations where people are being uncivil, your job is to actually lead in grace. And to understand that you have to show that we can agree to disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable. And for me, that has been one of the biggest lessons the girls have taught me. And I think you're right. There are great people across the country, my parents in particular, who have taught me, you have to treat people the way you want to be treated. Right? That is our family name. And so I think that we need everybody to stand up to that microphone. But as I learned in politics growing up with my parents, the person who gets the microphone first is the loudest. So maybe we just need a longer line in the microphone. So the research study results are out in the market right now. We should know here shortly what the research study says about the scholarships available to Eagle Scouts and Golden Award recipients. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you're probably right. And it's not that universities don't want to give the opportunity. We have to market it. We have to talk about it. We've got, every time a girl gets a gold award, it should be plastered to every newspaper. It should be, I went to a ceremony recently where the Eagle Scouts were getting their award, and the whole community was there. The mayor was there, right? The city council members were there. The head of other nonprofits were. Everybody had a proclamation. Are we doing the same for our girls? Right? So it's not taking away from any other experience. It's just validating that this experience is critical. And what I've learned from the Boy Scouts, because I've gone to them, because they've been doing this much longer as far as connecting the Eagle Scout community, they have whole directories. So if you're an Eagle Scout, right, you graduate from a university, you open up your directory. So say you want to get a job in Colorado, you open up the directory, you can find all the Eagle Scouts in every city in Colorado. Right? It's a whole network. It's a beautiful network of opportunities. So we want to create the same opportunities for girls.
Hi. Thank you so much. I'm a grandfather here in Stanford, and I had a daughter who was a Girl Scout, and I've had two granddaughters who were Girl Scouts. So I really applaud everything you do. I'm also a member of AARP, and AARP, in addition to doing the things it does for seniors, also takes stands on things like Social Security and Medicare and things like that. So I'm just wondering if your charter and your mission enables you to reach out beyond all the wonderful things you do for Girl Scouts all around the world, and let's say take a stand or take a position on Girl Scout safety for girls in schools or things like that. I'm not saying what that issue ought to be, but I just want to know how your mission enables you or disenables you to do that. Thank you very much.
Great question, and thank you for your connection to Girl Scouts. For us, it's always been part of our mission. Julie Gordon-Lowe, our founder, was very clear that we were the advocates and the voice for girls. So from very early on, we had an office in Washington, D.C., and we do have a public policy office and staff that does present our legislative agenda in front of Congress. In addition, each local Girl Scout council works at their local state capital with their legislators, the governor's office, with city councils across the country, really, to talk about the issues impacting children. And so for us, we talk about what are we doing to ensure that girls have better opportunities for healthy activities. What are we doing around the environment that's impacting them? So for us, every year we set a new legislative agenda. It's also to ensure that we have resources to support this mission. And that work continues. But I will tell you, because we are such a broad constituency, think about it. The umbrella of Girl Scouts covers every religion, every zip code in the country, right? Every ethnicity, every background. So we tend not to pick sides because we are the umbrella, right? We are the most inclusive organization for girls in the world. And so our focus is just ensuring that the girls get an opportunity to create opportunities for themselves and to advocate on their behalf. And so that is our focus.
When you were a Girl Scout, what were the problems that you faced?
So I would say many. I had 2 brothers. You know, for me, Girl Scouts just, you know, between my parents and my grandmother saying, you can do anything, you know, sitting in a community where sometimes resources weren't there. That, to me, was the biggest barrier, not thinking through how can I do what I really want to do. And because of Girl Scouts and going outdoors and going to my first camp, I discovered environmental justice issues at the age of 12. Believe me, that does a lot for you, right? Because it just got me into a mode of like, what do you mean we're destroying the environment? What do you mean we're not protecting our natural resources? And I started researching and realized that laws were passed, regulations were passed to protect our state parks and our state treasures. And I realized that because I went to my mother very upset about this, and she said, well, Aunt Medea, what are you going to do about it? And I'm like, well, somebody's got to pass a law, we've got to do something. She said, well, Aunt Medea, who does that? And I'm like, well, lawyers. She's like, well, and I said, I guess I'm going to law school. And I had mentors. I've always been very close to my teachers. So my middle school teachers basically helped me connect the dots, and the local librarian. And that's why I love being in this library. My library in Eloy, Arizona changed my life because the librarian had a rule. You could only check out 4 books a week. But she knew how passionate I was about these issues, so she would allow me to take my little wagon, park it right outside the door, and I'd go in and just very carefully examine the books I needed for the day, and she would basically turn a blind eye to the big old box of books that I would take home. And there I'd go, and I would read about the environment and what it took to be a lawyer. And it was my refuge. It really was. And it was a great place to be on a summer day with 112 heat, because it had air conditioning. And I learned to read. I was a ferocious reader when I was little. And I kept reading and reading and reading, and that's how I discovered that I had to graduate from high school, because I had to go to college. It was the only way I'd get into law school. So at the age of 12, she taught me, and my parents laid it out, what I needed to do. And that's what allowed me to be very passionate about my studies, and ultimately get a full scholarship to Yale. And I was the first kid in my high school of 2,000 people in Phoenix to get into Yale. And I've gone back to all my teachers and thanked them, because they instilled in me the ability to understand that education is the key. And that's what I tell my Girl Scouts all the time. I talk to them all the time. Study, study, study. Ignore boys until you're 25. Study, study, study,
study. You mentioned that you visit young women all over the world.
Yes.
I'm wondering, are there international cultural exchanges among young women to bond and understand how much they share?
So, interchange?
Yes.
Yes, it's a great question. So we have American Girl Scouts overseas. They live in all different countries. They live in almost every country you can think of, over 90. But we also have a sister organization that we work with very closely. It's the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. So if you live in France, you're French, you can join the Girl Guides in France. And we do a lot of interchange between our American girls living on foreign soil with the local Girl Guides. In addition, we have twinning programs that we call that essentially connects American Girl Scouts with Girl Scouts who are overseas to work on major projects. For example, Alcoa, which is a large corporation, global corporation, funded an ability to do twinning projects. So girls sitting here in the United States and girls in other countries could decide a take action program that they wanted to do together, and they actually flew to visit one another to take action in their respective communities. So we do that quite frequently. Now I will tell you, technology has helped with that, because now they Skype. so they can trade ideas and stories. And a lot of our Girl Scouts actually do their Gold Award projects based on global impact issues. And so they are already doing that technology. We're just trying to catch up to them.
This is our last question here in the purple.
Okay. I'm sitting here so proud of the girls of today, but I want to tell you that in the 1960s, I worked for the Girl Scout office in New York City, and I was in charge of the brownies all over the world. Not only did I help to empower those young children, but I became empowered also, so that my profession as a teacher empowered me to do the things that I have done in this community and in other communities.
Oh, that's so wonderful. You've got to come back to headquarters. We'd love to see you. If I could just end on this, I'm a true believer that when you get your team, you get your dream. And I have an amazing team that I'm part of, the national organization, of course, within councils, but I see a few of our members from our DSUSA headquarters office here tonight. I noticed Ann Abel, who's here. Please, Ann, please stand. Ann Abel, so the young woman in the back, we talked about, yes, you. We talked about the uniforms. Talk to Ann. She's part of our Girl Scout merchandise division. She's all about the uniforms. And also our Chief of Staff, Helen Murillo, is here. And dear partner of mine in communications, Elke, is also here. Thank you, Elke. So with that, I will close just to thank you. Thank you for embracing our organization for 103 years. I couldn't be more delighted to be part of it. I thank again our amazing volunteers, as many of them in the audience, and staff and councils all over the world who really believe in our mission and are proud to be part of it. For those of you who are going to come back home to the mothership, I welcome you back. It's time, come home, help us. We need it. The girls are so excited to do great things. And for those of you who financially invest in our organization, thank you. We could not do it without your support. So with that, again, on behalf of our movement, it's been a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Anna and all of the Girl Scouts and members of the organization, past, present, and future. It's really been an inspiring evening. Before you leave, if you haven't seen, please note that there is material about Girl Scouts on the back table and how you can be involved and engaged. I'd also like to let everyone know that the next Civility lecture here at the library will be on February 9th. The speaker will be Governor Jim Douglas of Vermont, Governor of Vermont, and he'll be discussing something of interest to all of us, civility in government. And he has told us that he will indeed address the current presidential campaign. So on that note, good night and thank you for coming back. And see you soon.